Hello, everyone. It's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, guys, I've been trying to get a video up for the past 4 hours. Today has been a fuckfest, to say the least. I accidentally threw away my power cord. We're moving, and I figured it out today. I found it out today as when I tried to log on to do videos. I go to Best Buy in order to purchase a universal socket, and the universal socket that I picked up apparently wasn't all that universal because it didn't work for my computer. And then there was a little note that said, hey, if these items don't work, send us an email or go to this particular thing and find your thing and we'll send it for free. Well, point is, the reason why I paid all that money to get it was because it said universal. It's somewhat it's not necessarily telling the truth. Yes, the plug may technically be universal, but no, it's not universal from the standpoint of what's in that box. So I ordered it on Amazon. I'm taking that back to get my money back. Not to mention moving all day. So today has been a fun class. That being said, I want to do the news. I want to get some videos in. I have a few. I have like 10 on my list that I wanted to get done. But this one I'm going to get done first because I think this one is the most lighthearted one. I think this one is the most fun. And yet the consequences are somewhat gargantuan. Let's say it that way. My girl, Katie Johnston, wrote a piece saying that all of these people in the news talking about aliens is weird. And I when I first heard, I was like, I don't like that. I don't like that word used for that. Then I read an article and I understood what she meant. So I agree with her and I disagree with her. And again, you guys know, I think she's fucking awesome. So me doing a piece talking about agree or disagree is kind of neither here nor there. That being said, the alien topic is one of the topics that I do know something about. At least I know what's floating about in regards to what's considered in that particular field, because that's one of those fields that I pay attention to. And so I do want to talk about this from the context that she gave it, because I'm glad that she's picking up on something. She's picking on something that I noted in one of my other videos about the Tom DeLonge stuff. So let's talk about it. Let's read a part of it and let's talk about what's being said and what my issue is. I don't like the term weird being used in reference to this, but that's only my own biases. It's like there are times like being a minority or being a class that was somewhat discriminated against. It makes the person somewhat a little bit more hyperactive and a little jumpy from the standpoint of taking something from somebody else. Meaning somebody does something, you're looking at it from the context to which you were raised, in the context to which, your environment provided. And you may act in a particular way that somebody else who wasn't necessarily exposed to that wouldn't act. Now, the onlooker looks at this and says, oh, that person is being overreactive. The fact is, the person is not necessarily overreacting. They're reacting based upon the experiences they've had in their society. So this is one of those things, forgive me if I'm slightly overacting on the term weird. For the longest time, this has been one of those subjects that nobody talked about. So it is strange that they're just talking about this now. But it's strange only from the context that they never talked about it. Like for the longest time, for God knows how long, this was one of those issues that was so not talked about and so ridiculed that media, all these people never brought it up. It's not something people brought up. In fact, even bringing it up, it would make people uncomfortable or weird. There had been that much propaganda built into the thing to get people to stay away from that particular topic. So my reaction to weird was like, I don't like that word. I don't like that word. Now, when you get into her article makes a particular point, and she is perfectly right about that point. It's a minor secondary point that I want to talk about where I somewhat disagree with. And I can't even say I full-throatedly disagree with that part. So the first part, all of these guys talking about it feels like some concerted effort. Now, this was the point that I made, and she will be right about this. The information that was released in the New York Times, Washington Post, Politico, the website, CNN, all these places, it was released, if you notice, at the exact same time. Fact is, this had been planned like 2 years in advance, at least 2 years in advance. The people in the UFO community knew that this was coming out, at least a few people, Grant being one of them, knew this was coming out. Tom DeLonge had said this was coming out. The media releasing this information as if the government or as if these parties all of a sudden just came up with the thing. Like the media just all of a sudden discovered this. No, This had been planned. This release had been planned for like 2 years. So she's right. I mean, this is not something that's just materially appeared into the public consciousness. Now, understand, of course, this is not something that's going to just materially appear into the public consciousness. What is the horror? What is the trauma if it gets out that there are aliens visiting this planet? Now, the moment that leaks, the moment that story is out, the moment that government confirms it, they've lost control of the narrative. They lost control of the narrative. All of those people who said they were being abducted, hey, maybe there's some reality to it. All of those people who say there was cattle mutilations, maybe there's some reality to it. Are aliens eating your babies? Are these things that are invading our airspace? Are they threatening? Do they believe in Jesus? Or do they believe in God? Are they capitalists? Can you imagine all the ridiculousness that comes up with asking questions like this? But this is the consciousness to which we have on this planet. So you can imagine that the government itself, or those bodies in charge of this information, there's a problem with releasing the information when you're concerned that this can destabilize your society. How did they get here? What are they using to get here? What is the energy that they're using to get here? What is the physics that they're using that we don't quite understand in order to make it to this particular planet? There's so many questions that comes up. How do we know what we are without the context of something to compare ourselves to? Fact is, that question is one of the most fundamental that we can ask. And yet it's been a question that's been hidden and pushed away out of fear, but also, they can't necessarily control the phenomena. Now, I'm going to get to her piece. I want to say this part first because I want to say this part first. Look, it's, like I said, it's one of those things that they've been putting to the side for God knows how long. So all of a sudden, these guys coming out with it and talking about it. It's, it's like, why are all of these people all of a sudden talking about a topic that for the past 50, 60 years, they've assiduously avoided an outright ridicule? Do you remember one of the presidential elections, it was a Democrat, they asked him about his UFO experience. I think it was Kucinich. And Kucinich froze up. Like the question itself was so unsettling to him that he froze when trying to answer this question. I think it was Dennis Kucinich. And now today we have this thing where newsmen are just tweeting about it, randomly tweeting about it. Brian Seltzer. These are just 3 videos now that have come out that everybody's looking at, but there's far more compelling evidence that I was privy to. I think you're looking at the tip of the iceberg. In fact is, Tom DeLonge has said there is a lot more evidence to come out. Grant, all these guys have said there is a lot more evidence to come out. They have physicists. They have all these other people associated with this project, some governmental types that would have been privy to this information on some of the files on this stuff. They've avoided this idea of what's in the craft. They've avoided that. The only thing they've talked about is there's some technology out there. Well, yeah, but if we didn't build the goddamn technology, aren't you curious about the people who did build it? Aren't you curious about the people who are either in it or remotely flying it? I mean, some of this technology is amazing. You're talking about these little lights that are going from point A. It's like these little balls. Now, the moment that you find the capacity for some kind of anti-gravity or something, some kind of thing to push against gravity, all sorts of shit becomes viable. Think of a little ball that runs through amazing speeds, something just small. And it runs through in order to take measurements, in order to take, maybe monitor, all sorts of stuff. Like you can imagine the amazing technologies that will be associated with a civilization that has cracked that particular code. It is fucking amazing. Here's the thing though. I want to stress the term weird for a moment. It's not weird or otherwise. Weird is relative to the perspective that's judging a particular thing. Nothing is nothing. If that makes sense. I know that sounds weird, but nothing is nothing. Like ultimately, the observer who's looking at this either has this within the context of their experience or they don't. Now, for the longest time, they've avoided this topic. So relative to avoiding this topic, it seems weird that they are starting to talk about it. Fact is, this is something they should have been talking about. We are a ball hurling through the cosmos. I've said that multiple times. We're a ball, a rock hurling through the goddamn cosmos. We are going at fantastic speeds through a vacuum of space. A little habitable space, spaceship Earth. That's what we are. What that means, though, is this little spaceship Earth, there's a lot of stuff out there. Like if you think of the scale of the universe, this expanding universe, think of all the planets, think of all the galaxies. There are more galaxies than grains of sand on the beach. What would humanity look like from the standpoint of science if it didn't waste all of its money in building weapons to kill other human beings? What would it look like if the $1 trillion that we spend on the military was actually invested into the public itself, meaning actually invested into sciences, arts, those type of things, where defense was not the premier thing, but personal advancement or advancement of the civilization? That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's a scientist, but that does mean that whoever, anywhere around the world that wants access to education, that education is available. What does that world look like? What does it look like? Like, I'm trying to get across this thing of, imagine for the moment that all of the needs of the people on the planet are met. And before you say, whoa, that's too, we have the technology to make that work. At this point, it becomes a choice for poverty and war and desperation. Those things are choices at this point. Just the billionaires and trillionaires, I mean, just the billionaires alone, the amount of money they made over the last year would have been enough to end poverty across the globe. It is a choice. It is a grossly immoral choice that we make. Putting it to this idea of, well, that's just the rule set and poverty would always exist. We say these things, but these things are just things that we say. They don't really mean anything, and they're not necessarily attached to reality. It just makes people feel better for other people's desperation. My point is, we get locked into these tiny little contexts of things. We're so focused on just getting our needs met, just basic survival, working a particular job in order to get a particular paycheck, in order to buy things that you need for your wife, your kid. And then going beyond that to this idea of status and everything else. I'm just saying, we get so locked into our basic context. This person is in school. This person talks to this woman. This person is infatuated with this woman. This person settles down and have a bunch of kids. The other person loses their job. They need to make ends meet. They finally get a job. Everybody is happy. They go to celebrate. But if you notice, all of this is based purely on them just existing. That's all it is. The amount of mental energy that we expend over the course of our lifetime is usually, often, for the majority of us, is just existing. Imagine for the moment if it wasn't expended in that way. We were a ball hurling through the cosmos. Yes, I understand you eat your Cheerios. I understand you play your Xbox. The fact is, we are a ball hurling through the cosmos. The economic system isn't real. Culture is not real. What is real is human beings, humanity, and the physical matter reality. We are a ball hurling through the cosmos. Yes, your job is important. I understand that, but understand all of this is based on this kind of a chosen economic system. It is subordinate to an actual reality. Actual reality is we're a ball hurling through the cosmos. In the same way that we're on this planet, in the same way that we go to our celestial neighbors like the moon and talk about going to Mars, imagine for the moment if another civilization didn't waste all of its resources murdering, killing, and starving each other, and instead use those resources for advancement. What would that civilization look like? Say you had 1,000 years of uninterrupted progress. What would that look like from a science standpoint? Trying to get here could be cracked. My point, that's kind of my point. There is a capacity for something to get here. Our physics, our science is only like 100, 200 years old. It's young, it's a baby. Any proclamations of what is and what is not are greatly overblown. I mean, they're lying to you. There's no way to know that stuff. It's like, how do you know what you don't know? You had Newton talking about this kind of fixed reality of sorts. There's this kind of mechanical universe. And that Planck was destroyed by Einstein, who's in some degree a part of the Planck that Einstein thought was destroyed by quantum mechanics. Each point along the way, the physics got more esoteric. And yet, they still would make these proclamations about what's possible and what's not. My point is, the real reality is we are a ball hurling through the cosmos. We are a being or beings who live on a planet that have a certain habitable space to which we are allowed life and to putter about. Our avatars, if you will, grafted to this physical matter, to this body. It is very possible that there are other planets. Again, there are more galaxies than grains of sand on the beaches of Earth, on all of the beaches of Earth. Are you telling me that humanity is special? It is more likely that life is abundant and will grow at any opportunity that life gets a chance to grow. There are things growing in volcanic vents. amazing temperatures. And again, you had scientists saying it is impossible for anything to live in that one until they found something that lived in that place. It is bizarre to me that the question is not asked more. Is there something else like us out there? Is there something else that's not like us that's out there? Is there something else that is conscious, that is aware, that is out there, that has the capacity to get here, that is already here? Fact is, these signs have been going on for the past 50, 60 years. The moment that we detonated a nuclear bomb, we started getting items or craft around our nuclear facilities. In some cases, shutting down the nuclear facilities, shutting down the nuclear missiles. Not just here, also in Russia. Also in Russia. So I agree with her that it is weird, but only weird from the context of what was talked about versus what was not talked about. The sudden shift to this, I agree with her, is suspicious. I don't like to use the term weird in this, that's all. I have a bias in the term weird. But I'm making a point that she's not necessarily wrong. I may take issue with the term, but she's right from the standpoint of this looks suspicious, this looks strange. All of these guys are coming out with this information. Many of these guys are military or spooks. And they're all of a sudden, with ease, talking about UFOs. Now, if you watch the Tucker Carlson one, Tucker Carlson was talking to the guy, and the guy was making this kind of threat detection. There's a threat, there's a threat. There's something out there. It's invading our airspace. We need to up our game. We need to do better. We need to... Now, understand, the reason he's doing this is because the money for this is in the military. Like, Tom DeLonge, To the Stars Academy, wants to build essentially a warp jet, a plane or vehicle that has the capacity of warp. He wants to be able to mimic the behavior that those craft, that they observe in the craft. How are you going to get the money to do that? You have $2 million from investors. That's not going to do it, buddy. How are you going to do it? Hey, I know, because you have such a depraved planet in the way that we go about our affairs, it's difficult to get money for actual science and advancement. But if you tell somebody that some is going to eat you and is going to eat your babies and is going to be serving humanity for dinner, then you can get money from the United States military, who's spending $1 trillion killing and murdering people around the globe. They're looking for money from defense. That would be the only reason that they're using this particular standpoint when they're talking about this particular phenomena. In fact, is media colludes with government in many respects. And yeah, now they have a free hand of talking about something that prior to this, they did not necessarily have a free hand of talking about. That's the truth of the matter. She's right in being somewhat suspicious because all of this was planned in advance to come out the way it's coming out. This is not just an organic thing. This is astroturf. The government knew about this stuff for God knows how long. And do you honestly believe that they only spent $20 million in this? Project Blue Book goes all the way back to like the 40s. I mean, come on. So in that part, she's right. In her article, she kind of makes this point. And let me just show it because I'm running my mouth. Let's see, share the screen. If this video is slightly odd, I apologize, guys. This computer is extraordinarily weak. So, all right. So this is a great article I'm going to put at the bottom. Mainstream media keeps running stories about space aliens, and all of a sudden, and it's weird. And it's weird. Scientists say space aliens could hack our planet by beaming contaminated messages our way. NBC News. Be afraid. Threat. Be afraid. Brian Stelzer. These are just 3 videos now that have come out that everybody's looking at, but there's far more compelling evidence that I was privy to. You know, I think you're looking at the tip of the iceberg. The mass media propaganda machine is very busy. It's got wars to manufacture, consent for. It's got Russia to lie about. It's got the CIA-packed midterm elections to sell a healthy democracy. It's got end-stage ecocidal neoliberalism to disguise as freedom and sanity. And it's got a corporatist oligarchy to dress up as constitutional representative republic. How is it finding the time to talk about space aliens so much all of a sudden? This is weird. I don't know much about the UFO phenomena, but I know that mass media machine and it's acting really weird. And I just like to flag that. She's right. I mean, I don't like the term weird because I have a knee-jerk reaction to the term. But her point is fair. It's right. It's something that I mentioned on the other video saying, I don't like the way they're going about this. This is not space, brother. This is not something visiting our shores. It's not necessarily violent. There is a threat. grab your kids and get your muskets. There is a threat from above our shores. That's what the way this comes across. So whatever Tom DeLonge thinks, whatever these guys think, Tom DeLonge has this idea of evil space aliens. So the fact that he has this particular idea with that particular company being fused with that idea, maybe, and the tone that these guys are taking when they're talking about this stuff comes across as we need to cover ourselves. We need to make sure we can have a response. There's something coming across our borders that we're not having control of. There's a phenomena that they're not talking about. We just need somebody to come forward. All of this stuff comes across as extraordinarily militaristic. And the fact that you have the military to be a large part of the contingent that's associated with To the Stars Academy, it's troubling. I'll just say it that way. One of the other parts she makes is this idea of stagecraft, that CIA wanted to use the UFO phenomena to cover some of their own projects and to boost it up. That is also true. Now, yes, that is true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't have the initial phenomena. I can't necessarily tell if Caitlin is saying that all of this is made up or something like that. But there was a beginning phenomena for them to make this on. Meaning, yeah, you had people who were infiltrating the UFO community, spreading lies and telling, fake documents and everything else in order to mar the issue. But you also had elements of the government, the CIA, using stagecraft to make planes and phenomena that we're using in the air, that we're doing, our special projects, and to attribute it to UFOs. There's no way possible for us to have a ship that can do this. There's no way possible for us to have something to do that. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that the initial incentive or the inspiration for it wasn't the craft that they observed in the first place. Those craft that buzzed the White House during the Truman administration, that wasn't made up. That wasn't stagecraft. Those were real crafts that buzzed the White House. The crafts that were flying over the nuclear facilities and shut those facilities down, those were real crafts. Those weren't made up. The United States government did not want their nuclear missiles shut down, and yet that's exactly what those craft did. The craft that was buzzing around some item that was thrown up, and the scientists, the government asked them to explain, what is that item buzzing around the missile that you put up? He looked at it and said, I have no idea. He goes back and he's like, holy shit. Holy shit. You can see a little craft with a beam hitting the thing. My point in this is, yes, she's right to be concerned. And yes, it's one of those things that you definitely should keep an eye on in the way that their tone has changed with the topic. It doesn't feel like the topic is out on the outskirts. It feels like the topic is, I guess, talk aboutable. Now, part of that could just be if you're not being cynical for the moment, that they find it interesting now that all of these stories have come out. And for some degree, it's almost like the government saying, it's almost like, like confirmation. That's what it's kind of like. Now, that could have given them somewhat a lease on saying, holy shit, this is interesting, and I've seen more information about this, so I want to talk about this. But she's right. It could also mean these guys are amping up and doing this kind of threat thing that the media is being part of or privy to. Be concerned, be aware, and keep an eye on your government. She's not fully wrong. And I guess as I talk about this, it makes me more realize that she's not wrong at all. I think I agree with everything she said in this article, with the exception of if there's any insinuation that the phenomenon is not real. And again, I think I had a reaction to the word weird. But ultimately, as I talk it out, I think she's right on all of it. I think you should pay attention to it. I think I've said that part early on. The transition from not talking about it to talking about it does seem strange, but that just seems strange because at one point they never talked about it. That's not necessarily indicative of something going on, but at the same token, the tone that these guys have been taking when they've been giving those interviews, it's disconcerting. Let's say it that way. Let's just say it that way. We've already spent $1 trillion on the military budget. Can you imagine what takes place if they try to make this thing up? Holy shit, there's something coming to our shores. There's something that could attack us. What can we do? Be terrified, be terrified, be afraid. Be afraid. Grab your muskets. Pull your babies close. We have aliens to fight. Understand, this is not something we could ever win, by the way. It's not something we could win. If they were hostile, they could have snuffed us out a long time ago. So, yes, she's right. It is strange in the way they've made this transition from nothing to all of a sudden being easy to talk about it. I am more concerned, not so much with the news. I am to some degree concerned with the news because the news can take this in a way where they gets the public afraid. and to buy into something. And of all the issues to get the public afraid on, this is not the one I want them to be afraid of. So I will leave it at that. Hopefully this video came out okay. This is new technology on a weaker, shittier computer, so we will see. My regular computer will be back operational on Saturday, so I'll be able to do live streaming then. But I'll leave it at that. She's an awesome writer. Even in that little piece that I wrote, I love the way she writes. The mass media propaganda machine is very busy. It's got wars to manufacture consent for. It's got Russia at the lab out. It's got the CIA-packed midterm election. It's a healthy democracy. I love that. That's so insightful. It's got an end-stage ecocidal neoliberalism to disguise as freedom and sanity. And it's got a corporate oligarchy that dressed up as a constitutional representative republic. How are they finding time to talk about space aliens all of a sudden? I love the way this woman writes. I love the way she writes. All right, I'm going to end it at that. Yes, I think she's right, ultimately. I think she's got to change my mind slightly on this. And ultimately, I have somewhat of a bias on the word weird in coordination with this topic. Maybe strange, probably wouldn't have reacted so badly. I was like, what the fuck? It's not weird. Why are you saying it's weird? But again, like I said, when I read the article, it made more sense. And I was like, yeah, she's right. It is strange in the way they all of a sudden switched on. But that strangeness was something I talked about weeks ago because I was like, I don't like the tone that these guys have been taking talking about this particular subject. Not to mention all these military guys have a certain workable point of view of the world that I don't necessarily want visited on this topic. So be aware of what your government is doing, even in something like this, especially in something like this. All right, guys, I'll end it here. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, or subscribe. And of course, you can always support through either PayPal or Patreon. Thanks, everyone.